Welcome back, guys. Paddy here again for a 2 Plus podcast battle report. Today, I'm going to run through a game I had against Mike, a friend of the pod. We were playing Orcs and Goblins against his newly painted Bretonnia, both Grand Army, and 2,000 points, playing the Scenario 3, which is drawn battle lines, which you can see the deployment on the left there, and I'll show you some photos in a second. So I just thought it was an interesting deployment that's new in the match play guide that I wanted to test out. It also has a rule for reserves, which didn't come up, so not a whole lot to talk about there. It's essentially a new map, which we were testing out. And we also played the Strategic Locations 3 setup, which is that box you can see on the right-hand side, which essentially gives 3 objectives to capture, equally spaced out in the middle of the board, worth 30 points at the end of each player's turn for the controlling player of a unit strength, I think, core unit strength 10 core unit that's within 6 inches of that objective. So I'll get into what happened in a second, and then a breakdown at the end on how I think objectives play a role, particularly strategic locations, which are probably going to be a very common feature of Warhammer games, Warhammer the Old World games, in the months ahead. But there you can see our map. You can see those 3 forests there, or the three woods. I'm still working on creating some objective markers, but they're roughly 40 mils, probably a bit big, but they were the objectives. So evenly spaced in the middle of the board, one that's easy to capture for your opponent, one that's equal, and one that's easy for you to capture. There's 2 impassables on the wide ends, 2 hills, 2 forests, and a couple of low linears in the middle, and you can see that diagonal deployment for each player marked out by the dice. Before we get stuck in, I just want to quickly thank our supporters, Ghost, Silver Dave, Sick, Panda Wargaming, Katro, and Gomo, and our newest 2 Plus supporter, Joshua. These are our paid Patreons. If you'd like to help out the channel, jump over to Patreon. The description is in... I always do that. The link to the description to the Patreon is in the description to this video. So if you are keen to help us out, support the channel by heading to that Patreon. Otherwise, like, comment, subscribe, as you always do. These are the lists. As you would expect in a Bretonnian army, 2 big hitting characters. There's a Duke with the Virtue of Heroism, which has Killing Blow, and Monster Slayer, which plays a role in this battle. He's on a Royal Peg, of course, with the Bedazzling Helm, which gives him a 2-up armor save and -1 to hit, and the Grail Pendant, which means when he loses his last wound on a 2+, he doesn't. That's a single-use item. He has a Paladin also with the Virtue of the Ideal, which I was quite impressed with. It makes him much more fighty, gives him an extra weapon skill, attack, leadership, and possibly initiative. He is a BSB with the War Banner and has the Gromril Great Helm, which is 2-up armor save and -1 to hit. No, it's Bedazzling Helm. I forget. 2-up armor save. And the Gauntlet of Jewel on him, which means I can't refuse a challenge. Now he has a spicy amount of peasants in this army, which is awesome, and I think we're going to see a lot of this. 36 men at arms. They were great in this game, which we're going to see. Full command on that. 2 units of 6 Knights of the Realm with full command. 2 units of 24 peasant bowmen with defensive stakes. Also good. 2 units of 5 mounted yeomen with feigned flight. 3 Pegasus Knights, 11 Squires, and 1 Field Trebuchet. This was my list, Orcs and Goblins Grand Army. I had a Black Orc Warboss with a great weapon on a Wyvern with the Trollhide Trousers, so a 2-up, 5-up, but no ward save. An Orc Warboss on a Warboar with the Deadard armor, which makes him have full plate and +1 toughness, making him toughness 6. Also the Grizzly Trophy Rack with the Choppiest Chopper, so Trophy Rack is -1 leadership within 6 inches of him. Choppiest Chopper, strength +1, AP -3. I also have an Orc Weird Boy on a boar with the Lore Familiar, taking battle magic, so Oaken Shield and Hammerhand. And the Collar of Zorga means basically any mount is -1 to hit against you, any beast of burden, as it's described in the item. I have a Night Goblin Oddnob with the Idol of Gork, running wire magic, so he has a +3 inch to his cast range and can reroll 1 casting roll per turn. 10 black orc, 10 black orcs with all the trimmings, 10 shields, 10 great weapons, because Siebes with Motley Crew, full command on that as well. 30 night goblins with netters, 3 fanatics, full command with spears, which I'd love to get people's opinions on in a second. 6 goblin wolf riders, 12 orc boar boys, biggins, cav spears, banner of butchery, shield, and then an orc boar chariot that's frenzied, and 2 doom divers. Here are those lists deployed. So I won't run through them in too much detail, but you can see us mapped out here. So we've got Mike's Bretonnia at the top end, my orcs and goblins down the bottom. Mike had this army commission painted, so this was the first game he got with them. They look great. Bretonnia looks awesome when they're a balanced list. They're really strong, but it softens the blow a bit once they have the normal makeup of an army. A few things just from deployment straight up. With these hills very far apart, he had an advantage with this trebuchet. I should have just known he was going to put a trebuchet there. My doom divers couldn't reach it, which costs me in the early game. But you can see a pretty standard deployment from him. His infantry in the middle, flanking knights on the side, flanking yeomen on the side, pegs in the middle because they can go wherever the hell they want. Some scouts in the middle. Night goblins, boar boys, black orcs, chariot, wyvern, wolf riders, and 2 doom divers down the bottom. And remember, these are our capturing objectives. So this is my turn. I went first. You can see I essentially just move on up. I drop a doom diver onto this unit because I wanted that. I probably could have targeted them. I don't know. This is something about peasants that I think is going to come up, especially in the early stages of this meta. There's so many of them that you just want to kill them. But as I found out in this game, they are so cheap and they have so many of them that it really doesn't matter if they die, which is such a basic Warhammer principle. They're essentially chaff, but chaff with a good 5-6 static combat res. I was very aggressive with my boar boys. Again, I think I have to be in this situation, but we'll see what pans out later. What I didn't realize, and this was my fault, was I actually didn't know that this guy had monster slaying killing blow. So I put him stupidly within charge range of this peg. I think he was about 16 inches out, which might cost me. This is the end of Bretonnia's turn 1. So you might notice I've got a glaring hole in the middle there, which we'll see in a sec, but you can see he's pushed up his men-at-arms, flanking with his flankers, charged my wyvern with his baron. He's got his archers there, sitting there, shooting, I think, what's that? So that's 8, 16, 24. So 8, 4, 16 shots a turn, just peppering stuff. And he was pretty clever with his maneuver of the Knights of the Realm up there, I thought. He kind of pushed them out and moved them here just to pressure flanking. I think people misplay Knights of the Realm a bit and think that they're a big hammer early on, when really they don't pack a whole lot of punch, so you've got to make sure your charge counts. And Mike did a really good job there getting out of my arc and forcing me to pick something else, and then having the threat of these guys sitting on the flank for after that combat unfolds. Pegasus Knights are bonkers. They just simply march from there to there. The shooting doesn't do a whole lot, except for this bad boy, who direct hits on my chariot, rolls 4 on the wounds, so I think he rolled a 6 on the wounds, so D3 plus 1, and pops that bad boy off turn 1. That was a real shame, because what had worked out for me was the chariot was here. They were going to tandem charge into this unit, which is, I think, going to be a very, very important thing of this edition of 1.5. The chariot has first charge, which removes a lot of combat res. It also will wreck toughness 3. And these guys getting in just means that it guarantees that obliteration of your opponent's unit. But nonetheless, that's what artillery is for. Stone throwers roll the dice and they hit and they pay off. Now over here, to my dismay, the monster slaying killing blow Duke gets straight into my Wyvern. Um, this was not what I wanted to happen, obviously, but say la vie. I am finding that Monster Slayer skirmishing guys, whether they be on pegs or not, I think Monster Slayer / Killing Blow is going to have a really big part in this edition as well. Just I feel like the ceiling's been brought down, so there'll be a lot more mid-tier fighter characters. Obviously, a Wyvern is still really good, and Monster Slayer would have dealt with him anyway in the past. But I've played 2 games. Killing Blow, Monster Slayer's come up twice. This was a massive misplay by me, but that's my fault. So I got caught out. He hit 5 times with his Duke, who was hitting on 4s, I believe. And this was his monster slaying roll. Poor Mike. And thankfully for me, my Wyvern survives 1 turn, although I think I lose combat by 1 and give ground only, which was a good result for me. But to be honest, I was essentially expecting the inevitable from here on out. So this is how the battlefield looks at the start of my next turn, so my turn 2. You can see over here, I was very upset with the Wyvern being caught up there, and I expect that he's going to die. It's pretty hard to break through a strength, 2 up, 5 up Duke. The first round of combat, I didn't do a wound to him, despite having, high enough weapon skill, high enough strength. The Wyvern just doesn't punch like a dragon does. A dragon is really the answer to the Peg Lord. Those, baseline attacks, and of course the 6 behemoth stomps. The Wyvern is not even a behemoth. So I really felt that there, and is a shortfall of Orcs and Goblins, but they have enough tools to make up for that, I believe. This is just exactly what you do not want to do. So learn from me, don't make that mistake, know your opponent's list, and play a bit smarter. But these guys over here were my ticket to salvation, essentially. I needed to then utilize these guys to rip through a whole lot of stuff. I had 2 really good charge targets here. I ended up choosing the men at arms as they had lost a good 8 guys from the Doom Diver shot from the turn before. So I was hoping I could get rid of their outnumber bonus, which would have helped in the combat res, but also my ball boys should just tear through these guys. So that's what I end up doing. I also end up charging my Wolf Riders into his Yeoman, which is a good old chaff off, which everyone loves. So this is the result of the ball boy combat. I kill 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 men at arms, which is a good result. Very good result. It's about what I was hoping for. They end up breaking and fleeing. They flee 12 inches this direction through the bowmen, who pass their panic check. I elect to pursue, and I roll like a 10 or something on my 3 dice, including Swift Stride. I made a mistake here and reformed. I checked with Mike, but we're both wrong. I believe that you can only reform if you actually catch the fleer, but someone can correct me in the comments there. So I should have just ended up facing those bowmen after pursuing the men at arms, which would have been a better result for me. What I was trying to do with this reform was to stop this guy charging into my rear or flank, but instead I give these guys my flank, which is a worse outcome. We'll get to that combat that's going to happen in a second, but I think that's going to again be it's going to point out a big factor for 1.5 moving forward involving the fighting rank. But my ball boys did the job in combat, and then I overestimated the value of a pursue. Really getting, I thought I would catch the men at arms, which would have been a good result, because then I can reform, or I have to overrun again into I can reform in a better position, not get combo charged. Instead, I fell short and ended up in no man's land and a sitting duck. So 2 of my main victory conditions in my army now in very, very bad positions, unless things go my way next turn. The old chaff off, my Wolf Riders win. I think I killed 3 of his dudes. He kills none or 1 of mine. They flee. They fall back in good order off the board. I overrun again. I probably should have. No, it was a 5 for him to go off the board. So I wanted them to go or get caught up in combat again. So I do that. My guys go off the board also. Not a whole lot happens on this flank. You can see my Night Goblins are sitting there just capturing this objective. He doesn't have a lot of core over here. So I just wanted to test out what to do with objectives in this game. You can see my Shaman is embedded in this unit. This is something I probably won't do in the future. It really hampered his line of sight. I had Itchy Nuisance, Vindictive Glare, Foot of Gork, and Evil Sunshinen, I think. So there's really no benefit of him being in there. If it comes down to it, I can move him in there. But I think the skirmish line of sight is just so important. I also feel like Night Goblins need short bows. The spears, it's just not worth it. You just end up sitting there doing nothing. I could have been, picking off some of these guys, picking off some of these guys. It's not going to do a whole lot, but it allows me to do something. And I also still think Ruby Ring has a place in 1.5 despite the nerf, because it blows up these guys on one roll, blows up these guys on one roll. So I'm definitely considering that again in the future for my casters. This was on my turn. The Duke, 5 attacks again, hits 3 times. No Monster Slayer. I do a wound to him, so I actually win combat this time. But it's my turn, which I really needed to win on his turn so I could fly away the next turn. So instead of, I essentially just do a wound to him and follow up. Not a whole lot happens there. But my guy survives, I suppose, till the end of 2.5, turn 2.5. So this is the state of play at the end of my turn. So you can see my Black Orcs and my Night Goblins are capturing this objective. He is capturing this objective with his Knights of the Realm. And there's a whole lot of crap over here that's going to go haywire in a second. His left flank starts to mobilize as well on his turn. So his turn starts here. He chooses to charge my Black Orcs with his Knights of the Realm. They fail. They rolled, I think, a 2 on his charge, so he couldn't re-roll it. And he rolled a 1 on the Swift Stride. So you can see just the impact of failing a charge. Check where that Pegasus Knight is and check how far he gets in front of it. It's about 2 inches. I think his charge roll would have been 6 inches or so. So unlucky for Mike there, but he had his fair share of luck in this game, which we're going to see in a second. He marches his Pegasus Knights right next to my Night Goblins that have 3 fanatics in them. So I am licking my lips at the moment thinking, what's he doing this for? I can just drop him out and pump them on my next turn, which I was very happy when he did this. He was pressuring my Doom Divers on this turn as well. He pot shots, direct hit, Trebuchet on one of my Doom Divers, knocks that off the board. So he was coming in to get the other one off the board his next turn. But fanatics are like the Night Goblins answer, Orcs and Goblins answer to Peg Knights. So I was really happy to see this happen, but we'll get to that in a second. This is the part that I want to put to the community, find out how people are playing this rule, because I think it's going to come up a lot with the changes to the fighting rank, and also the prevalence we expect of combo charging, and I suppose how specific people have to be with charging, and the intention to get flank and rear charges off again. So you can see here his bowman and his paladin both charged into my ball boys. So the bowmen are in the flank, creating a fighting rank here, and the paladin is in my front, creating a fighting rank here. Now his paladin issues a challenge. I accept with this, excuse me, with the Orc War Boss. So that essentially makes this guy, this guy, this guy, and this guy do nothing. This is what we think anyway, and this is what I want to ask to the group. A challenge happens in this fighting rank, not this one. Is this 2 separate fighting ranks, or is it one big one? Is it connected? Because that would mean that supporting attacks, as long as they are within movement, can attack over here. And if it's two separate ones, it means they can't. And also, if a challenge is happening in this fighting rank when there is another fighting rank, can these guys that are in the challenger's fighting rank, i.e., this shaman, move through the ranks to get to this one and cast Hammerhand? We played it as you couldn't. I think that's right, but I don't necessarily think it's that clear what a fighting rank is. If there's two separate fighting ranks operating next to each other, it feels natural that they should join, but I don't think it does. And moving through the ranks, I don't think is extremely clear as well, because it doesn't show an example of double engagement. So if you're flank and engage in your flank and your rear, the wording of this makes me think you can't move from a fighting rank to a fighting rank. So if you are engaged here and here as fighting ranks, you can't move this guy over to here, and you can't move this guy. Probably doesn't work for that example, but I suppose this is just, it's come up twice now. Again, I've played 2 games of 1.5. Flank charges, I think, will be happening more often. The moral of the story, shout out John, is to not get flank charged, obviously. But this happened, and it's happened twice now. And I think there needs to be a bit of ironing out of where a challenge takes place, what happens to the fighting rank that it's in, and what happens if you're engaged on two sides to your fighting rank. But anyway, if you guys know, let me know, because I think it might become a thing moving forward. This is the result of the combat. I only lose by 1, but I break on a roll of a 10, and I roll an 8 or a 7 on the flea. Somehow, Mike rolls a 4 on his pursue with his Pegasus. He holds with his bowman. So my boars live to fight another day, which is incredible. I have to rally them next turn. But when I rolled that 6 or 7 or 8 on the flea against the pursuing Pegasus, I thought I was stuffed. But the dice in this game were outrageous. It was just going crazy, like huge peaks and huge troughs, which was awesome. Unfortunately, though, it was the end of my Wyvern. This was the 3rd round of combat. He had 2 hits that went through, and he had 2 Monster Slayers that went through. I was going nowhere with this combat anyway. It was inevitable. I think it's a shame that I didn't put enough preparation into knowing my opponent's list, which it's a tip for everyone, and had the opportunity to play around it. Eventually, he probably catches me anyway, but it might be on circumstances that I prefer rather than this. But regardless, he's dead, and now the Duke gets to roam free. So this is how the board state is at the end of his turn. You can see his pegs over there waiting to couple fanatics, his failed charge here, and some more knights bearing down on the Black Orcs. The Black Orcs are no longer capturing this objective, so I'm only capturing this one now, and he is capturing 1, and 1 is just going vacant. So on my turn, I rally the Boar Boys here. I make another mistake with my rallying, with my reforming, because I forgot that I could move as well when you rally. You can march, in fact. So I could have maybe got in a more advantageous position, but regardless, I was in a pretty disadvantaged position on this battlefield. So I could have done better here, but I rallied them and was happy they're on the table, so I just turned them around. I did give these guys my flank, my rear again, which I actually don't think was the worst result, but I did get out of this charge arc, which was good also. But the Paladin is bearing down once more to challenge some dudes out. I release my Fanatics. I move my 3 Fanatics through. I roll 10 hits. I roll 7 wounds. Mike rolls 6 ward saves. Oh, man. That one hurt a lot. Yeah, nothing to say there. That's the dice. That's Warhammer. So be it. It was hilarious, which you've got to just embrace in these scenarios. If I killed 2 of them, it probably still goes, the other one probably still goes on and just wrecks my Doom Diver anyway, so no harm done. But it felt like things were going against me at this stage, was a really, common feeling in Warhammer when you feel the battle going dreadfully against you. So this is the state of play at the end of my turn. You can see my rallied boar boys. My Black Orcs didn't really have much to do, and there's a takeaway at the end, which I'll point to. They're the Night Goblins sitting in no man's land. These guys sitting in no man's land. The Duke with a million different options at the moment, and plenty of destruction to hand out. On Mike's turn, he gets the left Knights of the Realm in on a charge. Somehow these guys fail again by 1 inch. This is the other unit of Knights of the Realm. 2 units would have cleaned up my Black Orcs for sure. Instead, I kill a guy, he kills two. I stubborn, he follows up. Black Orcs are good, definitely. Like they are tough. They have a 3-up save, 4-up if you're using your great weapons, which might not always be the best method anymore. They're still strength 4, so they can dish out some damage. But yeah, they hold their own. Every time I've played them 5 or 6 times now. Only a unit of 10. I've got 10 more to paint up, which I will be doing. But they held their own in this scenario. The Duke, surprisingly to me, goes after my Wolf Riders because I didn't think that this combat was necessarily a foregone conclusion, and his Duke could have gotten in as well. So I was surprised when Mike went after my chaff, but this is the thing with pegs, they can just pick who they want. The Wolf Riders could have threatened the Trebuchet in the back corner if I got there, but you know, essentially they're an 80-point chaff unit with a banner. Seems like a waste of time for the Duke, but it didn't really matter for Mike, who was crushing me anyway. Shout out to Mike's kid who was with us, 6-month-old that Mike cradled for most of this game. Very well behaved, drank all his milk, and watched his dad crush someone in Warhammer. So this is the next round of combat v my boar boys. This one was a bit more straightforward, I think, with the fighting ranks. So the paladin is in my flank. He issues a challenge. I stupidly accepted with my 1 wound war boss. I should have accepted with my champion because this is where you can move characters through the ranks to move to the fighting rank. So my shaman was able to go to the front. This guy would have been able to go to the front as well and dish out a lot more damage than one orc boar boy, which was a mistake on my behalf. And you can see what happens here. The paladin kills my war boss. I kill, though, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 peasant bowmen. I get hammerhand off and it just demolishes guys. And these 4 do some wounds also, but the peasants managed to kill a boar as well. The interesting part of this was, I believe, this one was a draw, so he stood still. If I moved my war boss through the ranks, I would be confident that he would do at least 1 more wound and win on Mike's turn, which is really important because then I get to reform and I also get to pick a combat that I like on my turn by charging. So that was a mistake by my play there and could have changed the way this all unfolded and bought me a bit more time, although the Duke was not far away if he wanted to be. Over here, this is the second round of combat with the Knights of the Realm, which I'll get to the result in a second. His Duke challenges, or doesn't, my Wolf Rider champion challenges, cops 7 wounds. Interestingly, for Bretonnia, the challenge mechanic that changed means that your mounted guy, if he's on a dragon, which Bretonnia don't have, but the big change to the challenge mechanic was that mounted lords on dragons usually will kill a unit champion before the dragon gets to attack. Bretonian lords, even the Duke, and its Pegasus have initiative 5, so they both attack together at initiative 8 generally when they charge. So they get to get their full boat of attacks, no stomps, into a challenge. In this scenario against my Goblin Wolf Rider champion, he does 7 wounds, wins by a lot. I roll double 1 and hold. So that was interesting, but a very interesting point. Bretonian Dukes pretty good into charging blocks of infantry by themselves because they can dish out a whole lot of wounds to a poor little men-at-arms champion, for example. So the pegs run down my backside and kill a Doom Diver, and then set up for a charge on my Night Goblins on the next turn. And my Black Orcs win against the Knights of the Realm. I do 3 wounds to Mike's 2. So Black Orcs, once they take that first hit, as long as they've chipped away some damage, which they can do now with their two ranks of fighting rank, they can definitely hold their own against charging infantry because of their strength 4 base, strength 6. With great weapons, weapon skill 4 isn't too bad either. However, we are going to push ahead, just probably focusing on the key moments that remain in this battle because there's probably 3 of them. So the Black Orcs here push back the Knights of the Realm, but then get charged by the other unit of Knights of the Realm and get wiped out, which is understandable. I really had to kill those last 2 guys to get anything from it. That was again just delaying the inevitable, and kind of points to the fact of what the role of elite infantry is. If they're just sitting ducks, I think you have to have a lot of them, or they have to be really good, or have a wizard or something in there just to make them a bit more durable and a bit more reliable, because eventually combo charges will just whittle them away. Mike combo charges here. So you're seeing now this theme of combo charges. I gave him a lot with my boar boys, obviously, but this has been a consistency throughout the games I've played so far. Mounted yeomen, Pegasus Knights, charge into my Night Goblins. My Night Goblins win, which is awesome. His yeomen fall back and his pegs give ground. So I elect to follow up against the Peg Knights. But I have 1 turn to try and clear those Pegasus Knights before I get combo charged in the rear and inevitably wiped off the face of the earth. This is obviously the main part of the game that remains. So Mike has killed my Orc War Boss in a challenge, my champion in a challenge. The only one that's remaining now is my Shaman, which he challenges out with the Paladin again and kills quite easily. The Paladin just did so much work. It was very reliable with that virtue of the ideal. Makes him definitely a bit more fighty than the Paladins I've played in the past. I do a couple of wounds to the Bowman, but I end up giving ground, no, falling back in good order here, which we'll see in a second. I actually beat the Peg Knights, and they break and flee, which was a moral victory for me, but not more than that. On Mike's next turn, they fail to rally, and they go off the board, which was a double moral victory for me, but, you know, the game was gone by here. This is all it takes somehow to wipe out my Night Goblins. I think I had 18 attacks here into those Knights of the Realm, maybe less. Maybe I had 15, and I rolled something like 2 hits from a 4-up. So it wasn't going my way with the dice in certain scenarios. Not that it mattered here either. But 2 Knights of the Realm, 3 mounted yeomen managed to clean up the Night Goblins. This was that fallback in good order I spoke about. Unit strength 3 v unit strength 3. We decided to do a roll off to see who I flee from. I'm not sure what the rule says, but I was happy with that. I end up fleeing away from the Bowman, which puts me over here, but still the Peg in my front. So on his turn, he's able to charge, do 3 wounds to my boar boys, and chase them down on the flee this time. And that is how it ends. I lost everything. Mike didn't lose much at all. A lot of mistakes made by me, but some good play by Mike as well. But the takeaways from me, secondaries. So I was on 2 secondaries for a lot of that game in the start, and Mike was not. At the end score was 390 points to Mike to 380 points to me, and it was a tabling. Like Mike cleaned me up. So secondaries, I think, might need a bit of tinkering. I think that's for TOs to figure out. I think so. I've played King of the Hill and I've played this one. It felt more impactful having high value victory points of one thing to capture rather than lots of little bits, because that just ends up splitting. The board is good that it has different areas of focus in that regard, but in terms of victory points, it doesn't really sway the battle too much, I don't think, in the early stages. But happy to see what you guys think. Peasants, to me, are a huge win for Bretonnia. lots and lots and lots of them. They are so cheap. You can't capture their banners. When they die, when they force someone to charge, then it's a waste of time for them unless they obliterate them and are going in the correct direction. So they're like the prime chaff for Bretonnia. Sure, they're movement 4, but they are huge roadblocks that some can get massive combat res now. I think the relic, what are they called? The Grail monks can keep challenging or something like that. But there's a lot of interest, I think, for peasants for Bretonnia in 1.5. The 10 elite infantry is not enough. So you saw that with my Black Orcs. If I had 20 there, they probably hold there that entire game and start dishing out damage more reliably. I'm looking at running a unit of 18, just to kind of give them a bit more oomph in offense. So that's where I'm going to take the Black Orcs. I really think the fighting rank needs to be cleared up, unless I'm just confused. But Alex, the other half of this pod, also confused. I've put it to chats, and no one's really sure. There's a lot of, oh, it's definitely this, because how else would you interpret it? Well, I think it's pretty easy to interpret it multiple ways. So I would love to know what happens to the fighting ranks, and things like, can you move through a fighting rank to a fighting rank? I think it's no, but regardless, I think just the way this game is playing now in 1.5, it needs to be cleared up along with challenges. The other part is to choose your targets wisely. The Boar Boys may have been a mistake, may have not been. I only had 2 options, but maybe charging those peasant bowmen to the left at the start of the game would have put them in a much better position. I could have ran off the board as an overrun and reset, set up for a countercharge, something like that. But at the end of the day, that is Warhammer, and it was still a great game despite losing 2,600 to, I think it was about 600. So it was an absolute shellacking. But Mike's army looked great. He played well. I like my new army that I'm playing. Exploring this objective based game is really interesting, and I'm keen to do more of it. So let me know what you're doing with objectives and 1.5 in general in the comments. And again, consider joining our Patreon if you're liking this content. There's plenty more to come. But I will see you guys next time for the next 2+ episode. I'm Patty. I'll catch you later.